Good afternoon, everyone. So I want to share thoughts I had about Abraham and his incidents with Sarah, his wife. We were recently looking at this in a church cell group meeting, um, and some thoughts struck me. Now, this is pertaining to Sarah having giving his wife, his Sarah giving her maid Hagar to Abraham to so that Abraham can have a child. Okay. Um, I'll give a few examples and yeah, just think about it and look at it. So the story is in Genesis. Let me just read it. Genesis chapter 16. Um, Verse 1, Sarah, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. Verse 2, so Sarah said to Abraham, see now the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go in to my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her. And Abram, he was still Abram at that time, heeded the voice of Sarah. All right, so this is the first time God had promised him a child. Now, is this before God promised or not? God had promised, because when Abraham left, he says, go, I'll make you a great nation, and so on. So at that point already, there was that particular promise. So Sarah now looks to have a child, says she doesn't have a child. Now, I see a number of people in the Bible who don't have children. And John's parents, Elizabeth and I've forgotten who was born at the time of Jesus, John the Baptist. They were quite old. We see Hannah and Peninnah, if I'm not mistaken, with my Bible stories, wives of Eli, was it Elkanah? Ish, I'm getting rusty. So she never had a child as well, and she was praying, and he says, look, can't you know you're worth more than so many children. So anyway, we have Sarah here. Sarah gives him a proposal and says, go into my maid. She was an Egyptian maid servant, because Abraham had been in Egypt earlier on. And the last part of the verse says, Abram heeded the voice of Sarah. Genesis 16 verse 2. That's number one. Verse 3, then Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went in to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. So when Hagar had a child, the mistress, who is Sarah, became despised in her eyes. I don't know what treatment Hagar started getting, or what gave her the rights to brag and to despise her own mistress, whom she bore a child for, if we should put it in that phrase. But it seems it turned out rather nasty. Very unfortunately. I don't know how Sarah was the boss, Hagar was the maid, so Sarah should have handled this situation. So I don't know how Sarah handled it or how she didn't handle it, but it became nasty. Verse 5 said, then Sarah said to Abram, my wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she conceived, I became despised in her eyes. This is the NKJV I'm using. The Lord judge between you and me. Sarah became bitter, and she went to her husband, okay, rightly so, and complained to him, or accused him, or whatever it was. Finally, verse 6, so Abram said to Sarah, indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please. And when Sarah dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. So Hagar fled from the presence of Sarah and left. The rest of the story, the child's name was Ishmael. Hagar went into the wilderness, and Ishmael was hungry, and so on. And the rest of the story goes. But my points are in this passage which I've read, and there are two verses which I want to point out. Number one, when Sarah gave Abram the idea, the proposal to say, go in and have a child with my maidservant Hagar, who is an Egyptian. That wasn't his wife. Already, that's a problem. Why did Abraham heed to his wife? Was it a normal thing for a man to have a mistress? Was it a normal thing for him to have children through her? You see that Jacob also had children, the 12 tribes of Israel, through Leah, through Rachel, through Rachel's servant, and through Leah's servant. Okay? Now, I don't know if that was a normal thing, it was not a normal thing, but marriage from creation created them male and female. Adam and Eve was one husband and one wife. So already there was that. Was it a cultural thing? Was it a convenience thing? Abraham was a rich man. So he was a man of faith. He was a man of God. Though that doesn't justify anything, it's just curious to wonder why he did that. Number two, when she complained and said, look, Hagar is now mistreating me. Look what's happening. God judge between you and me. I don't know what may have happened. Maybe Abraham may have embraced her. I don't know. Even after the child, maybe she had preferential treatment in the house because of the child. Nothing is written. We don't know. But Sarah, there was probably some beef between Hagar and Sarah. Number two, what Abraham did. And the main element of this is Abraham's actions. Abraham said, look, she's in your hand, verse 6. Your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please. So here we see Abraham reacting two ways. Number one, he heeds to his wife when she says, have a child with my maid. Number two, when she comes back, he says, do as you please. Twice, Abraham lets the woman make the decision, and he just follows along. And this is one thing I want to point out, especially to the men and in terms of leadership. Now, this is a marriage issue. There was an issue which came up in our discussion about the men. As a couple, you make decisions together, and it's a very important thing. But you still have to make the right decision together. If you make the wrong decision together, you suffer the consequences. So at some point, if it's the wrong decision, one of you has to stand up and say, my husband, I don't think this is right. My wife, I don't think this is right. And so on. Ananias and Sapphira made the wrong decision as a couple. They made a decision as a couple, but it was the wrong decision. So it's good that they agreed. It's good they discussed as a couple, but unfortunately they discussed and agreed on doing the wrong thing. So as a couples, you must encourage each other to do the right thing. If one makes the wrong decision, you suffer. So they agreed here to do the wrong. Abraham heeded to his wife. He should have stopped and said, no, let's not do this. Let's not have a child with her. Let's wait on the promise of the Lord. It's very hard to accuse the father of the faith, big old father Abraham, but he probably made the wrong decision here in heeding to his wife. We see Adam making the same decision, listening to Eve and taking the fruit to eat. A good example we see is Job, whose wife said, look, you're suffering, curse God and die. And Job said, woman, can we accept good from God and not evil? That shall not be so. That's a contrast to the other examples we've seen of Abram and Adam. There a man took a bold decision and said, let's stand for the truth. Abraham in this case should have stood and said, woman, let's not do this. It's not right. Let's stand up for the truth. Let's wait on God's promise. The second time she said, your woman is doing this, he absolved himself of responsibility. He said, woman, you do with her as you're supposed to. That's the second instance where he didn't take leadership as a man. And he allowed her. I was sitting in the sun. I'm still sitting in the sun. So that was the second point where he, as a man, didn't take leadership. He should have said, okay, Sarah, I've seen this situation. That is my child. We made this decision together. We're going to do this to Hagar. We're going to do this. Now, Sarah obviously would have had an option to handle it maturely. But obviously, Sarah was already embittered because of what Hagar had been doing. So obviously, this wasn't going to be a very good reaction or a very good decision she was going to make. We knew that this would be fire. She's upset because this woman, obviously, she'll either chase her, she'll either make her life difficult. And so she did. I don't know if Abraham should have stepped in to make a right decision. and say, this is how we're going to handle it. Be a peacemaker. Men are, I don't say men are more rational than women, but in this case where the woman is already upset, when somebody is upset, you need somebody who is not upset, man or woman, to help make a rational decision or a calm decision, a third voice or voice of wisdom. So we see a second time when Abram absolves himself of responsibility, says, do whatever it is you want. With regards to male leadership, we have to stand for what is right. Yes, there's a responsibility as a couple to discuss things together, as a man to ask your wife and so on, even to give her responsibility and say, look, take care of everything. We see with Joseph that Pharaoh and Potiphar, he didn't care of anything except what he ate because he knew Joseph was responsible. And there are a lot of things in the house, there are a lot of things in the family which a woman will make good decisions about and so on. Every godly woman should. Every godly man, husband should. But in this case, Abraham should have made a godly decision and has shown godly leadership like Job did and rebuked his wife and said, no, let's not do this. I don't know if this is indicative of Abraham's character because he did it twice. How many times? He did show leadership when the angels came who were going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of he was caring about the cities and obviously his nephew Lot. We see when Lot's servants and his servants were fighting over land, he told Lot, choose where you want to go. I'll go. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left. And Lot chose. That's a mature person. He lets somebody else choose. Okay. I don't think I would call that a lack of decision making and saying, okay, I'll go this way. But that's more of humility. So that one I'll credit him and say he did well to give Lot the choice. But in this case, giving Sarah the choice, especially for some of this, he should have not just he heeded her voice. He said, Madam, let's sit down and think through this. Does this show lack of trust? Does this show lack of faith? Should we wait? Is it a good idea? If they did and they came to this conclusion, then he also has a responsibility to bear about this thing happening. But unfortunately, the events turned out the way they did. Eventually, Sarah did have a child, proof that God was fulfilled his promise. Unfortunately, they didn't wait, but we had Hagar and Ishmael being expelled, and apparently from history, that brings in those are the descendants to the Muslims and whatever. Okay, here's the situation we have now. But that's the lesson for today. Men, husbands and fathers, we have a responsibility to ensure that we make godly decisions with our spouses, godly decisions in our churches, godly decisions in our homes. The buck ends with us. We're human, we make mistakes, but we see twice he says, do whatever it is. He heeds his wife. He does this. I think that was a lack of leadership on his part. I don't know if people would think of it or see it in another way and what your ideas would be. But that's the lesson for today. Men take leadership like Job did. Job said, no, we shall not accept good from God and not evil. Job really stood under pressure. All the while he was already suffering. He had sores. He was in ashes and sackcloth. But even then, he was able to stand his ground. What more if you're just comfortable and everything is okay? No, it's okay. I'll forgo this. That's a call to leadership. That's a call to manly decision. Not to seclude your wives or partners in making decisions, but to making the right decision with her or making the right decision against her, if you understand what I mean. Like in this case, she gives a wrong proposal. You must stand up and say no. And yeah, a lesson. What are your thoughts? How will you judge Abraham's character from these two decisions of agreeing to have the child through Hagar and agreeing to and telling his wife to sort it out herself? How do you see it? And how do you think that links to male leadership, male character? All right. Thought for the day. Take care.